Alassane Ouattara ill in France, pathetic maneuver to save appearances. On January 23, 2025, in the community section of my main YouTube channel, CHRIS YAPI TV OFFICIELLE, I published the following information. The TYRAN Alassane Ouattara staying in Paris is not entitled to a lunch at the ÉLYSÉE and had to settle with a phone call. What went wrong? I will read it to you. On January 17, the tyrant Alassane Ouattara discreetly flew to Paris. Officially, the trip was for medical reasons, but in reality, it concealed much more political ambitions. True to his habits, the old fox was hoping for a grand invitation to the Élysée, a meeting that, in his eyes, would reaffirm his importance in France's sphere of influence. However, instead of the traditional lunch under the presidential gilded ceilings, he had to settle for a mere phone call. This snub raises a burning question: what went wrong between Emmanuel Macron and this Ivorian tyrant? Alassane Ouattara belongs to a generation of African despots for whom pomp and the symbolism of diplomatic honors are essential to their legitimacy. For years, he managed to impose his intrusive presence at the Élysée, forcing French leaders to accommodate his demands. But this time, President Macron did not bend to his whims. The tensions, previously masked by diplomatic politeness, erupted into full view. The breaking point between the two men dates back to October 2024. During a heated phone call, Macron is said to have strongly disapproved of Ouattara's ambitions for a fourth term, even going so far as to suggest a successor in the person of Mr. Biwu. This suggestion reportedly triggered a furious outburst from the Ivorian tyrant, resulting in a vagal episode the following day. Since then, relations between the two heads of state have cooled. Yet, aware of Paris's importance in his political maneuvers, Ouattara tried to mend fences. Before his departure for the French capital, he crafted a two-pronged strategy, accompanied by suitcases full of euros derived from Ivorian cocoa revenues. First, he highlighted Côte d'Ivoire's critical role as a pillar of regional stability in a West Africa destabilized by successive coups in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Second, he presented himself as a bulwark against chaos, ready to make the sacrifice of his person to ensure stability. A sacrifice, really? The man who seeks a fourth, and possibly a fifth, term claims to hate power, yet seems utterly incapable of relinquishing it. Macron's refusal to host an official meeting speaks volumes about the state of Franco-Ivorian relations. The phone call, though cordial, could not conceal France's growing disinterest in a tyrant whose prolonged stay in power has become increasingly embarrassing. The announced retrocession of the French military base in Abidjan, which Ouattara tried to frame as a sovereign decision, is, in reality, a diplomatic slap in the face. Moreover, recent statements by the Ivorian government, aimed at downplaying Macron's controversial remarks about France's military interventions in Africa, reflected deep unease. Alassane Ouattara appears increasingly isolated on the international stage, a situation exacerbated by his outsized ambitions for a fourth term. As Côte d'Ivoire's presidential election looms in October 2025, Ouattara's strategy seems riskier than ever. If his political adversaries and even his traditional allies perceive his growing isolation, he could quickly lose control of a system he has long dominated. Meanwhile, Emmanuel Macron, aware of the ongoing upheavals in West Africa, seems already to be preparing for the post-Ouattara era. The tyrant's medical and diplomatic trip to Paris could have been an opportunity to strengthen strategic alliances. But between his noticeable absence from the Élysée and the mere phone call, it is clear that Alassane Ouattara no longer holds the same appeal for French leaders. For a man accustomed to diplomatic grandeur, this indifference is a severe blow. And if this episode signals the beginning of the end for the bold fox, one thing is certain: the tide has turned. So here is what I wrote on January 23. However, 2 days later, my faithful owls informed me that the old guy was trying a pathetic maneuver to save appearances. Indeed, Alassane Ouattara persists and signs in the art of political staging. Instead of focusing on his declining health, the 83-year-old man, suffering from throat cancer, which is progressing inexorably, prefers to force a meeting at the Élysée with Emmanuel Macron. To create an illusion, to try to dazzle Africans with a false demonstration of power. See, I am still supported, Macron is with me, I remain France's favorite ally. But who can still be fooled by this sad spectacle? While he staged himself on the steps of the Élysée, with the French flag wrapped around a palm tree as a background, hoping that this would silence the rumors of disgrace, the tyrant Ouattara showed one thing above all, a dictator at the end of his rope, who has not managed to silence the rumors which have been circulating since last year around his succession.
Exactement en 2020, j'indiquais à au corps diplomatique.
Exactly in 2020, I indicated to the diplomatic corps that it was my intention to no longer be a candidate because I felt that it was necessary to hand over to the next generation. Today, I can tell you that I did well to accept my party's proposal. As of today, I have not yet made a decision. But I also want to reassure you that I am in good health and willing to continue serving my country. But I also want to reassure you that I am in good health and willing to continue serving my country.
Comme je l'ai également dit, mon parti dispose d'au moins une demi-douzaine.
But, as I also said, my party has at least half a dozen candidates in this room. I would like once again to reassure you and the entire community that this election, which will take place on October 25th, will be peaceful, democratic and transparent. That this propagation of the message that he is seeking a fourth term is necessarily interpreted by some as a sign of inevitable instability in Côte d'Ivoire, it no longer deceives anyone. What does this obsession with external validation reveal if not an inability to focus on what matters? Instead of taking care of himself, stepping down with dignity, Ouattara desperately clings to power and the illusion of international support. But this lunch with Macron is nothing other than an empty publicity stunt, a mirage that does not resolve any of the real problems that Côte d'Ivoire is currently experiencing. As for Macron, himself weakened and contested in France, what can he really offer the old guy? A handshake, a photo, a polite smile. Nothing that can hide the cracks in this worn-out system. By brandishing French support as a weapon to give a legitimate appearance to a possible new candidacy, we are presented with a fashionable makeover of the Old West which, at the end of this month of October, would have offered a slice of €2 billion for development. Alassane Ouattara may well force meetings and show closeness to Macron, but that will not erase the growing criticism, nor the weariness of his people in the face of his obstinacy for a fourth term. This lunch is a desperate attempt to maintain a semblance of prestige, but above all it illustrates the disconnection of a man who refuses to recognize the end of his reign. CHRIS YAPI does not lie. Find CHRIS YAPI on his 2 YouTube channels, his Rumble channel, his TikTok, X, Instagram, VK and Threads accounts.